Good morning, I'm Dr. Kamal Bajaj. I'm Professor at Department of Orthodontics. The topic that I'm going to present upon today is management of common malocclusion. So in this we are going to understand exactly how do we evaluate a case. So whenever we start a case, we have to create the database. The database is created by interviewing the patient and the parents, doing the clinical examination and studying the diagnostic records. Once the database is created, we formulate the problem list and prioritize them. According to the prioritized problem list, we set treatment objectives for the patient and possible solutions are offered to the patient, and a parent-patient consultation is done. So there is a standard protocol which we follow while formulating the treatment plan for a particular case. So whenever we have to treat a case, first of all we control the systemic diseases of the patient, then control of the dental diseases like initial restoration for dental caries and restoration of gingival health is done. Once the restoration of gingival health and caries are taken care of, we go ahead with the orthodontic treatment. After the orthodontic treatment is complete, we go ahead with final restorations and final processes of the patient, and definitive perio surgeries are executed for the patient if required. So now let's see an example like how do we go ahead with the treatment planning for a case. The patient name was Aishwarya. She was 20 years old. She had a chief complaint of irregularly placed teeth. So whenever we get a patient, we start off with clinical examination. Clinical examination is always started off extraorally. Extraorally, we examine the patient in a frontal view and a profile view. Frontal view, when we see the patient, we check for the symmetry of the patient's face. 4 horizontal lines divide the face in equal thirds: upper 1/3, middle 1/3 and lower 1/3. Okay. Face is also divided vertically by 5 vertical lines which divide the face in equal transverse fifth. Frontally, we also pay attention to the lower 1/3 of the face. Lower 1/3 of the face is divided into upper 1/3 by a line passing between subnasal and interlabial fissure, and lower 2/3 which is between the interlabial line and the line passing through submental. Once the proportions are assessed frontally, we go for profile evaluation of the patient. This is a simple way of assessing the profile of the patient by clinical means. Index finger is placed on the maxillary bone and the middle finger is placed on the mandibular bone. So in a class 1 scenario, we see that the index finger is slightly ahead of the middle finger. The situation will be reversed when we have a class 2 or a class 3 situation. Only when the frontal and the profile evaluation is complete, we go ahead to inner details, that is the smile evaluation. So after the smile is evaluated, we go intraorally, check out the dental features. So the arrow here indicates the mesiobuccal cusp, which is a major determinant when we go ahead with Engel's classification, which is the most popular way of classifying malocclusion. So according to the Engel's classification, mesiobuccal groove falls under the mesiobuccal developmental groove of the mandibular molar, and the situation is different in class 2 and class 3 malocclusions. So once we classify the malocclusion, we study the models of the patient. In the model analysis, we try to evaluate the relationship of arch length with the arch tooth material, and we check out whether the tooth material arch width also correspond with each other, and maxillary and mandibular dentition also, like the ratio of the maxillary and mandibular dentition is also checked out. So supplemental radiographs are taken, OPG is taken to evaluate if we have any dental anomaly. The lateral ceph of the patient is evaluated to check out whether the dental and the skeletal values of the patient correspond with the norms established for the situation. So once all the records are checked, we formulate a diagnosis for the patient. So for this patient that we just saw, it was Engel's class 1 malocclusion on class 1 skeletal basis. With vertical growth pattern, crowding was observed in maxillary and mandibular arch, and tooth material arch length discrepancy was 13 mm for the maxillary arch and 12 mm for the mandibular arch. Now the problem list is formulated according to the situation of the patient. Like in our case, it was crowding in the upper lower arches, buccally placed canines 1, 3, 2, 3 and 3, 3. Rotations were present for the mentioned teeth. Root stump was there for 2, 5 and there was a decay in tooth number 4, 7. So once the restorations and initial perio procedures are taken care of, we move over to orthodontic plan. That was extraction of tooth number 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 4 and 4, 4. Leveling and alignment was done and the final finishing and detailing of the occlusion was done. So what are the factors that we consider while treatment planning? First and the foremost is the patient goal and the desire, then the timing of the treatment, complexity of the treatment, predictability of the treatment choices that we offer to the parent and the patient, and the cost benefit ratio for whatever plan that we suggest to the parents. The foremost point is the patient's goals and the desire. Chief complaint is always recorded in the patient's own words. Treatment plan should meet patient's expectations within the limits. Our main aim is to achieve the Jackson's triad, that is, we wish to provide aesthetic harmony, functional efficiency and structural balance after the treatment is executed. How is the timing of treatment important? Like in primary and early mixed dentition phase, the procedures that we opt for are preventive and interceptive procedures. In the mixed dentition phase of the patient, we go for growth modulation procedures. For the young adolescent patient, comprehensive therapy is started that can incorporate either camouflage or growth modification for the patient. And for the adult patients, it's either the camouflage that we opt for or the orthognathic surgeries. So the complexity of the treatment is the process that we opt for is called as the orthodontic triage. Through orthodontic triage, separation of cases depending upon the severity and the complexity of the problem is done. There are certain difficult cases which are always undertaken by the specialist, like the syndromes and the developmental anomalies, patients who are growing above the 97th percentile or below the 3rd percentile on the standard growth chart. The skeletal problems like the sagittal, transverse and vertical problems are always under the purview of the specialist. Similarly, excessive protrusion, retrusion of anterior teeth, missing ankylosed and supernumerary teeth, localized space deficiency of 3 mm or more due to premature loss of deciduous teeth, these all fall under the category of severe cases which are taken care of by the orthodontist and not by the general dentist. Then incisor irregularity with space deficiency of 4 mm or more or midline diastema of 2 mm or more after the permanent canine eruption, these are all under the purview of the orthodontist. So using the envelope of discrepancy, we also classify cases according to the severity. So the inner envelope that we see is the category which we can treat with orthodontics alone. The yellow or the middle envelope, we have to use orthodontics plus the orthopedic management. This envelope is slightly expanded using micro screws for skeletal anchorage. So whatever degree of malocclusion that falls outside this middle envelope has to be treated by surgery. So this way we can classify cases according to the severity of the situation. So whenever we are trying to camouflage a skeletal situation, there are certain situations in which camouflage is a better way of doing it. Otherwise, it will produce there are certain situations in which it will produce poor results. So average or short facial patterns, mild anteroposterior jaw discrepancies, normal soft tissue features, nose, lip and chin, no transverse skeletal problems, natural compensation has not occurred for skeletal discrepancy. These are situations in which camouflage will produce good results. On the other side, if we have vertical facial patterns, moderate to severe anteroposterior jaw discrepancies, exaggerated soft tissue features, transverse skeletal components of the problems, natural compensation which has already taken place for skeletal disproportion, these all situations are not in favor of camouflage. Another part is the planning space whenever we have to plan the treatment. So there are certain situations in which space is required for the resolution of the same, like for decrowding of for the creation of decrowding we need space, then derotation of anterior teeth we require space, correction of molar relation, leveling of curve of P, overjet reduction. All these things require space. There's some situations in which space is actually gained. So whenever we rotate posterior tooth, space is gained by us. For proclination of anterior teeth, that also provides us space, and natural spacing which is already existing in the arch provides us space for the management of problem. So once the space is assessed, we have to plan the anchorage. Anchorage is to avoid any unwanted reactionary tooth movement which can be created by our mechanics. We have to plan the retention. Also, retention should be planned keeping in mind the factors that may lead to relapse. Adjunctive procedures like supracrustal fibrotomy can be carried out in order to favor retention. So now we move over to management of certain common malocclusions. The first malocclusion that we'll study is midline diastema. Midline diastema is a very common finding in childhood. More than 26% of the children usually have diastema which is around 2 mm. In mixed dentition, the diastema is still pretty prevalent, like 15 to 20% of the kids of this age usually have midline diastema. Adults, it decreases, 6% of the adults have midline diastema. There is certain racial predilection as well. Blacks have more tendency towards midline diastema as compared to the whites, and males have increased tendency of having midline diastema as compared to the females. The important point about midline diastema is like it's a very easy problem to treat, but it is usually very difficult to retain. So let's see about etiological factors causing midline diastema. It's a transient malocclusion in deciduous dentition and mixed dentition stage. Ugly duckling, when the canines are erupting, they push the lateral, the root of the laterals laterally, thus creating midline diastema. It could also be because of the generalized spacing present in a case, which could be either because of the relative microdontia or absolute microdontia, or it could be a result of tooth material arch length excess, like in a case of congenitally missing teeth, peg laterals, extractions of early exfoliation of the deciduous teeth, or the Bolton's discrepancy, or it could be a part of genetic and racial predilection. Certain pathological situations also create midline diastema, like the abnormal frenal attachments, pressure habits like the thumb sucking and the tongue thrusting. Midline pathology is the presence of mesiodens, Seyss testra, and trauma from occlusion as seen in the deep bite situations. It can also be caused by iatrogenic procedures like the arch expansion. It is a prognostic sign indicative of intermaxillary suture opening. Like the figures just that we see, the first is the ugly duckling situation, then there is the generalized spacing, then because of the microdontia the diastema is seen, then we have the peg lateral, abnormally attached lip frenum, habits resulting in midline diastema like the thumb sucking or the tongue thrusting, the presence of mesiodens, traumatic occlusion resulting in opening up of the diastema. Then we have the RME, like once the expansion of the jawbone takes place, then the midline diastema appears. So it is a prognostic sign here. So how do we go about diagnosing a case of midline diastema? The first and foremost, we take the history, the family history, the history of the habits, or the history of any trauma that the patient might have experienced earlier. In the clinical examination, the assessment of the dental age is done. We find out any missing or unerupted permanent teeth. Blanch test is done to check out the attachment of the labial frenum, and the evaluation of the overjet is done. Supplemental radiographs are done to examine notching of the interradicular bone, presence of any midline supernumerary teeth, soft tissue, or the intrabony lesions. Missing teeth are also examined in radiographic examination. Model analysis is done to check out the tooth size, arch length discrepancy, and the amount of overjet present in the case. So how do we categorize the treatment? In primary dentition, usually it's a transient malocclusion, so no treatment is done. In case if there is a pathology, that has to be taken care of. In the mixed dentition, again, like the ugly duckling stage, it's a self-correcting transient malocclusion, nothing has to be done. Habit breaking appliances can be instituted in this stage. for the thumb sucking and tongue thrusting habit. But in case if the patient is having severe rotations of the central incisor or is having an aesthetic complaint, then the treatment is done in the mixed dentition also. In the permanent dentition, the treatment is divided into phases. First is the etiologic phase. Etiologic phase, we eliminate the abnormal habits. Elimination of midline pathological conditions are done, and frenectomies are done in order to favor the correction. The second phase is the corrective phase. Corrective phase is undertaken using the removable appliances and the fixed appliances. Removable whenever the tipping is required and the diastema is less than 2 mm. In case if the diastema is more than 2 mm and the bodily movement is required, then the fixed appliances are used. Removable appliances, we can utilize the finger spring or the split label bow for the correction of midline diastema. Fixed appliances, we use adjunctive forces by the means of elastics, M loops, coil springs, and in fact without orthodontic treatment by building up the tooth surfaces by composites and veneers. Retention, again this is a very easy malocclusion to treat, but there are very high chances of relapse. First and foremost thing is the complete elimination of etiological factors, and the cases go for permanent retention. The second malocclusion that we are going to study is spacing. Spacing is pretty common in primary and mixed dentition phases. Generalized developmental spacing are observed in primary and mixed dentition stages. Localized primary spaces are seen between upper B and C and lower C and D. So these are physiological spaces. In the permanent dentition, we might have spaces like which are distributed generally, or it could be localized spacing. So general etiological factors means there would be a discrepancy between tooth size and arch length. There could be oligodontia, microdontia, or macrognathia. Localized causes may be because of morphological alteration in particular teeth like the paglateral rotations, abnormal brachial habits, macroglossia, unerupted supernumerary teeth, pathologies, and premature loss of permanent teeth. So diagnosis involves taking a complete history, doing a proper clinical examination, assessment of dental age, examining for missing unerupted permanent teeth, and evaluation of overjet. So radiographic examination helps us to evaluate the periodontal bone support, whether there are any supernumerary teeth present or not, soft tissue or intrabony lesions, or any missing teeth. Model analysis helps us to calculate the tooth size, arch length discrepancy, and the amount of overjet, creating the situation. So treatment again is divided into phases. First is the etiologic phase, second is again the corrective phase, and third is the use of crowns and the prosthesis. So we can use again the removable appliances when the spacing is less, and fixed appliances when the spacing is more and we require bodily proper execution of proper resolution of the situation. So retention is again elimination of etiological factors and permanent retention to sort out the situation. The third malocclusion that we have is the crowding or imbrication, which is a very common malocclusion in Indian population. Lower incisor crowding is also commonly known as imbrication. This is rare in deciduous dentition, but in mixed dentition and permanent dentition, this is because of the tooth size arch length discrepancy. So tooth size arch length discrepancy is created because of the premature loss of the deciduous teeth or the mesial migration of the posterior teeth, or it could be because of the increased tooth material, that is the presence of supernumerary or extra teeth, prolonged retention of deciduous teeth, and ectopic eruption of permanent successor, or large size teeth as compared to the relatively sized smaller size jaws. So the major theory which account for imbrication are lack of the normal iteration in modern diet, late mandibular growth and anti-clockwise rotation of the mandible, and pressure from the erupting third molars. So diagnosis involves a routine clinical examination and radiographic examination, examination of the eruption schedule of the dentition, and the model analysis is done to calculate the tooth size arch length discrepancy. In mixed dentition stage, it is important for us to prevent and intercept the crowding using space maintainers and space regainers, and timely extraction of deciduous teeth to prevent the development of crowding. In mixed dentition, evaluation has to be done regarding the amount of discrepancy that we have, up to 2 millimeter of incisor crowding will resolve on its own, and nothing particular has to be done for that. If the crowding is of the order of 4 millimeter or less, then expansion has to be undertaken. Primary canines have to be extracted and lingual holding arches have to be given, and 2x4 appliances can also be used. But if the discrepancy is of the order of 10 millimeter or more, then serial extraction has to be executed. In permanent dentition, again, our guide is the tooth size arch length discrepancy. If the discrepancy is less than 5, non-extraction can sort out the situation, non-extraction situation. Otherwise, if the crowding is 5 to 9 millimeter, either we can opt for extraction or non-extraction. But if the crowding is more than 9, we have to resolve the discrepancy using extractions. Rotation is another common problem that needs correction. Tooth movement that occur along the long axis are rotations. These are also termed as torsiversion. Derotation of anterior teeth needs space, but posterior teeth actually give us space when we derotate them. So removable appliances using Z-springs can be used for the correction of rotations, or the fixed appliances using Nitai wires, elastics, or the couple forces can help us in correction of rotations. Again, it's easier to correct rotations, just that it's difficult to retain. For the help, helping for the retention of the situations, CSF, that is the circumferential supracrestal fibrotomy, will be of help, severing the supracrestal and the transeptal fiber. Scalpel is inserted into gingival circles, severing the epithelial attachments and the fibers, thus favoring retention. The last malocclusion that we study today is bimaxillary protrusion, in which there is normal class 1 molar relationship, but the dentition is forwardly placed with respect to the upper lower jaw bases. So this is common in Afro-Caribbean and Orientals. In India, the common place where we usually see bimaxillary proclinations are South Indians. So it is mostly hereditary and familial in etiology, tongue thrusting being one of the cause of bimaxillary proclination. The clinical features that we see in BMP cases are convex profile, decreased nasolabial angle, incompetent lips, increased lip strain, everted lower lip, and puckering of the chin. Intraorally, what we observe is bimaxillary proclination, that is both the arches forwardly placed with respect to the jaw's bases, decreased interincisal angle, and normal class 1 molar and canine relationship. The plan usually is sorting out the space discrepancy that is existing, calculating the space discrepancy, resolving it using the extraction of premolars and the retraction of anteriors. Surgical correction might also be required if it is true skeletal prognathism. Subapical osteotomies and setback can be done concomitant with the extraction of the premolars. Thank you.